And Korea?
For the Korea one, it still applies to say that you're inviting the world champions. I think that's still reasonable. But obviously, unfortunately, like inviting teams like Origin, actually, technically, Origin's not an invite. They won San Jose. But inviting Fnatic at this point in time and then inviting TSM looks kind of crap just for where they are.
Well, they won last year.
The world,
that's the thing. They won the IEM World Championship at Katowice. So inviting CLG, I think. Well, CLG was second at IEM in San Jose.
But the point is, the field isn't as sick as you would have thought 2 months ago.
Well, of course not. I mean, if you asked us before the spring season started, on paper, obviously this lineup looks amazing, but the reality is that's not exactly the case, is it?
I mean, basically, only China actually got their best team sitter, which I think it is actually in itself a great storyline, though, because all the shitting on China that's gone on all these months and every month, and unfortunately, because IEM San Jose continued, I think now is the best time ever for China to come back, have a strong performance in it, and then people to shut the fuck up in the West. Like, I've noticed this terrible trend that goes at this Monty. So when a Western team that everyone thinks is really good doesn't make it that far in a tournament, what people do is they work overtime to find excuses for why they didn't make it that far. Now, normally, in the history of League of Legends, Chinese teams do make it far. So then the Western fan makes excuses as to why that team did make it far. Like Xiaogu were one game from winning IEM Cologne. All I saw was people saying how terrible they were. It's a lovely world we live in, right?
Well, that was a team that was beaten by a Korean challenger team at the time, and we'll get into this a little bit. I actually don't think Ever's very good right now, but you know, there are some factors there, and I think Xiaogu obviously is coming out pretty strong in this particular event. The thing about IEM Katowice is that every team is flawed in its own special way. They're very human. We don't have that ultimate juggernaut that is the Tigers at this event right now. We have a bunch of middle-of-the-pack teams or top-of-the-pack Chinese teams that all have their own kind of peculiar weaknesses. So it actually should be a very interesting tournament from that regard, because we're talking about some very strong styles that also have very strong weaknesses with them, which makes it, for me, actually quite interesting.
Right. For the moment, ignoring the players we're going to pick in the groups, just looking at the overall field, who is the favourite? Is there a clear one for you?
SK Telecom.
So why are they the clear favourite?
Because they still have very strong individual players, and I think that even though their synergy and their strategy has been lacking, it's still better than anyone else in this tournament.
Because the thing is, the primary factor that I think makes it hard to bet against SK Telecom is that the final is best of 5. Like, if the final was a best of 3, there's a lot more upset potential, but obviously, no matter what problems SKT have had, if you give them a whole best of 5 series, it's going to be pretty hard to win 3 out of 5 against them.
Well, but it's also that Bengi isn't even here.
Okay, why is that? Because
they're running Blank instead, their sub-jungler.
And should that be worse or better? Because, I mean, Bengi has had his problems.
He has had his problems, but, Blank hasn't performed in the games, really, that he's been in so far. He's played 3 games this season. He's only won 1 of them. One of those losses was not really his fault. He was playing Kindred against Jin Air when they ran that triple AD composition and just sort of poked him to death, and he couldn't actually do anything in that game because of the composition that SKT was running. But that also shows that SKT has had some drafting flaws.
See, obviously, Coma just literally playing Twitter analysis Mad Libs. Blank is the reason SKT lost this tournament. Blank really underperformed at IEM Worlds. See, okay, Coma, I see what you're doing there, mate. I see what's going on.
Well, he's filling in the blanks with the new jungler, that's for sure. And that's the aspect of this that is very interesting, because in some ways it shows that. So we haven't seen Blank in a while. It's been Bengi in the roster and Champions. And one wonders whether even SKT is taking this tournament seriously right now, because maybe they view it as less important than Champions and they want to just give Blank international experience instead of actually winning, which is a possibility.
What did you actually think of him in the games? I mean, they did play him. It's not like they only played him against the shit teams. They played him against Kuwano, or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Now, was he okay? I mean, obviously, in your debut, you never used to.
He's never been outstanding. But that said, neither has Bengi in this meta. Like, it seems, from what I understand from talking to SKT, is that Blank has been performing very well in scrims, but he's having trouble adjusting to the stage. This is a guy who's played in LPL, though. He subbed for Insec last year, and I don't know. He just apparently hasn't been able to replicate that success. I mean, we look at his ladder rankings, for Korea, and he's very high up on the ladder as it stands right now. I'll take a look and see exactly where he is, but on the challenger ladder, he's currently ranked 7th with a 60% win rate. So his solo queue scores are good. From what I understand, his play in terms of the actual scrims are good. It's just he's had trouble converting that into some actual results on the stage, which is obviously a big problem. I mean, if we look at Blank right now, hold on, let me pull up his stats for a moment because they're pretty interesting actually. So he's in terms of fantasy too. He's a bit of a dark horse because we don't know that much about this guy. Hang on, just a moment. But if I pull up the jungle stats for all of the junglers in Korea, and we look at all of them, Blank right now, when we look at kill participation, which is one of the most important stats for a jungler, he's at 52%, which is the lowest, even below Bubbling. So, for example, Bubbling from CJ Entus is at 65.8%. Blank, over 3 games, small sample size, 52%. So he really hasn't been on point when it comes to his pathing or his ganking, and he's not really contributing what we would normally consider a good kill participation stat for a jungler. Usually when we look at junglers, like 65% would be like a bad jungler kill contribution. 80% would be a very good one, right? So we're looking at basically like a 15% margin there. And so 52% is fucking terrible.
Okay. So if it's so bad, then let's not expect monster performance out of the jungler. So the question is, will players like Faker, Duke, etc., just in terms of their matchups, do you think they will dominate this tournament?
Well, that's the other factor to consider, and we have to look at the brackets in order to take a look at that. And the first game is SKT versus CLG. So yes, I do think that Duke will dominate Darshan. I do think Faker will dominate Huhi, and I do think Bang will dominate Stixxay. And I think that that's like, when people are hyping CLG at this tournament, have they had good strategic play? Yes, they have. I think that CLG's strength is in their shot calling. My problem with the way that CLG has been playing is I think that Stixxay and Huhi are not internationally capable players. I think on an individual skill level, they're not great. We've seen a lot of mechanical errors from Huhi. We've seen a lot of mechanical errors or decision-making errors from Stixxay as well, which cause them to die and then give them disadvantages. And the way that CLG has been winning games primarily is based around Darshan split pushing. Darshan is not going to outplay Duke. Like, that's not, I don't think that's going to happen. And so when they're so reliant on their top laner, for example, yes, this was a weaker form of CLG that we saw at IEM San Jose, but remember the finals against Origin where Darshan did really well again for all of the games that CLG played up until that point, and he was the major focus factor and the focal point in their wins. But when we go back and we take a look at the Origin series, basically Origin just focused him, fed Soaz on Darshan, and then CLG got destroyed. And I think that if they put Darshan behind, Stixxay and Huhi are not going to be able to carry versus Faker and versus Bang. And the thing about Huhi too is that when you actually look at his champion pool, something very interesting occurs, which is that Huhi, so CLG's record is 10-4, right? Huhi has played 9 games of LeBlanc and Corki. Okay? He's 8-1 on LeBlanc and Corki. When he's not playing LeBlanc or Corki, he's 2-3. Right, so they've been really focused on these 2 champions for him, and I think if he gets banned out, or if Faker first picks Corki against him, Faker's a much better Corki player, and he's also a much better LeBlanc player than Huhi. So it's really, when we look at CLG, they've been focusing very laser focused on this one strategy the entire season, and I think Huhi will be massively exposed if he's not on one of those 2 champions.
I was actually shocked that people rated CLG so high. For anyone who doesn't know, LoL Esports did a preview, and essentially the preview was a power ranking. And the power ranking had CLG ranked second best team at this event, and not even second best with another team in their like in their bracket, as in like in the same tier as them. They were their own tier, second best in the whole event. That's ludicrous to me.
I argued against that. I was part of that discussion, and I said no. I think CLG has a pretty good macro game right now, but I think that their individual players will be lacking at the international level for the reasons that I'm telling you right now. And I think that just based on what we've seen, and yes, it was a worse CLG at IEM San Jose, but we look at that matchup versus Origin. When Darshan was shut down, the rest of the team just failed to function. And Huhi looked like a trash can in that tournament. He's looked better, but again, only on 2 champions. And these are 2 champions that Faker plays better. Like, I just don't see a matchup here where CLG succeeds.
For me, CLG now, one of the reasons I actually like, they're one of my favorite teams to watch at the moment in NALCS, because they do have that like Cloud9 quality, as in the old Cloud9, where they have the players aren't the sickest. In fact, you look at the roster and you're still like, this team probably shouldn't be second in NALCS, but they win games with like they're using their brain. They set up good scenarios. They get back into games. That's all brilliant stuff. But remember, the originators of that, Cloud9, never used to do much internationally either. They used to do the same thing. They'd be like dancing all around everyone in NA, then they'd go to the international tournament, they'd lose lane, they'd lose the fights, and you know what? God forbid, there might be a team with better players than you who has decent shot calling, and suddenly it's over. Like, you've lost all your advantages. So, personally, I think CLG is not going to do well in this tournament. Like, I look at all the teams here, I don't think they're even going to make top 4. I mean, that's just me, but I don't think they're going to go far.
That was my opinion, just based on individual talent at the carry positions. And I think that it depends. If people correctly identify that Darshan is the strength and shut him down, Huhi and Stixxay are not going to carry this team to a win. They're not. And it's also very similar to Cloud9, like you're saying, in the way that, hey, like Hai, remember Hai? He had no champion pool. As far as I can tell, Huhi has no champion pool right now. Again, 8-1 on LeBlanc and Corki, 2-3 on other champions for a team that is 10-4. Okay, that's a major red flag right there. Huge red flag. He hasn't even played that many champions this season, and he's been not successful on many of them. And on these champions that are very meta picks, like Corki and LeBlanc, that there are going to be individual players that can just straight up outskill him on either of these picks. I mean, Faker is the best mid Corki in the world.
I've also just seen too many seasons now. Like, here's what's funny is I don't know where this notion came from that like Darshan is like some super coachable player and like he's a team player and all this stuff, because the guy has literally spent like 4 seasons worth of League of Legends trying to like pick for lane and then fucking split push, like 4 seasons.
And he's playing Jax again, and Jax is a piece of shit.
Like the best case scenario is literally the best case scenario for Darshan is when the meta forces him to pick a tank, and then he has to join the team fight and actually like play fucking team oriented. When he has the option to do like a carry top, he's just going to do that every time. He's done it for his whole career in all like 5 different teams now or something.
And that's how CLG beat teams like Immortals and beat teams like Cloud9. And I'm not saying don't use Darshan to his strengths. It's just that works in NA. That doesn't work when you have to play Duke. You will not beat Duke in lane if you are Darshan. That's not a thing that is going to happen. Unless there's some, it's just a best of 1. Maybe they can win, but it's Darshan. We've seen what happens. Like, just go ahead and rewind the clock in your brain to when CLG actually had another carry, which was Doublelift. And that was at the World Championship. Do you remember what happened when Smeb encountered Darshan at the World Championship? It wasn't even close.
Yeah. I mean, and that's also another problem CLG will have. At least the old Cloud9 was so macro focused in the sense of they were trying to find team fights, etc. The problem is this isn't going to work in terms of when you play all these really sick players who are the laners, like you're saying. So, okay, the other team that I find interesting though, in light of the fact that SKT has blank, is personally of the 2 Chinese teams, I think RNG is the better of the 2, because you look at like the way the group system works in China, their group is way more stacked than the other.
Yeah, it is way more stacked.
So you don't just look at the record there, you got to look at like the actual games. RNG.
It also helps that their record is 2-0 against QG from like last week.
Sure, but I mean they first of all, I've watched some of their games. They look pretty good as a team anyway, but also when you consider a team like SK Telecom, who's another team who can vie with them for the title, has a weakness at the jungle position. Dude, I think that MLXG is going to be the best jungler in this tournament. Like this guy,
Swift is really good too. Like you can't really.
The style of play he's going to have though, he's just going to go ham on everyone basically.
The thing about RNG that's interesting is that Kelsey Moser brought this up in her article, which I would encourage people to go read. The title of which is, you can look it up at the Score Esports, which is the title of it, which is a Dancing Around the Swap, a closer look at Never Give Up and QG Reaper's playstyles. Is that Royal is like an insanely Baron focused team. And the thing that I've noticed about watching Royal play is that they play entirely around Mata and MLXG. And this works, and they can snowball games very efficiently when these players get ahead. But when Mata and MLXG get up behind, they have no idea what to do, and they start just trying random Barons and then just die. So it depends. Like, I feel that they're very dependent on Mata being ahead and Mata's laning phase and Mata's shot calling, because they will play around that. And the way Royal has played this season is Mata calls Looper down for a teleport. They play a very aggressive skirmish. They take kills. They take turrets. And if that works, they're really good at snowballing. And they're really good at taking early Barons. If that doesn't work, they have no fucking clue what to do. So Royal is a dangerous team if they get an advantage. But I think if you can shut down Mata's laning phase, then you will have a much easier time.
That's where it's going to be hard, though, because if NMLXG is just like playing fucking Nidalee or something, invades, gets a kill early on, then they're already rolling at that point, mate.
Yeah, MLXG is a fun player to watch. He definitely is. Like, although MLXG, I think his most success, as Kelsey pointed out, has been on Rek'Sai and Graves this season. So these are champions that are very suited to his play style, and I think Royal's a pretty good team. I won't say good. I'll say pretty good. But again, they do look lost. Like I don't. And it's very hard to put Mata behind in the laning phase. Like there aren't very many teams that are going to be able to dominate Mata in lane because he's so fucking good at it. But I think that if you can push him behind, that they will flounder.
Now, Froskurin said LPL teams have an incredibly limited exposure to the 6.3 patch.
Yeah, they've been playing on 6.1.
So what is the problem there? What is the differences that we're going to see? Because obviously this is something famously that happened 2 years ago at IEM, the one that
I mean, there are a lot of differences in terms of champion pool. Though obviously Gragas is going to be coming back in this patch, and who knows how good they are at running Gragas. Like I don't know the answer to that question really. That's probably going to be the single biggest factor. So, but there were a bunch of other junglers that were sort of enabled to, like, Udyr or Rumble. I believe Graves. Yeah, I think patch 6.3 is the one where Graves was nerfed, so that might be problematic. There are a lot of changes.
So Udyr will be played in this patch, or are you saying it's been nerfed?
No. He might be, especially by CLG, who's been running him a lot recently. I
mean, you'd think that Udyr should be a great champion for Chinese teams, right? If they like to skirmish and fight a lot.
Well, Udyr's mostly useful for split pushing right now with the Zerat portal and just like running into lane and dropping it. And it's also pre-nerf Runic Echoes, which means that Nidalee and Udyr are both very strong on 6.3. On 6.4, Runic Echoes was nerfed, the jungle item.
Okay. But it shouldn't be as drastic as in some past years where, for example, like nobody played Morgana at the tournament 2 years ago, and then they were going to have to go and play all these teams who only played it. Like, it won't be as ridiculous as that.
I don't think it should be that bad, no.
Okay. Also helps that it's the two best Chinese teams coming, where some of those past tournaments we're talking about was where, like, sometimes it was like, we are sending Invictus Gaming, who are a trash can in LPL anyway, you know?
Yeah. So okay. I think Royal's a fun team to watch, but I like the way they play games with their ahead, and I like their Baron focus. I don't know how good they can be if Mata and their shot calling gets behind. We've seen some weird teleports from Looper at times. Even in their second game versus QG, I'm not sure exactly what Looper was doing with his TP. It was not great.
What do you actually think of the laners of RNG? Because the thing is, they don't have players who are known as superstar players. I mean, most people had know who Whoosh or whatever that guy's name is, because the team wasn't like a super team in the past.
I mean, I think Xiaohu's pretty good. I think that the strength of the team is Mata's shot calling and his ability to, I would assume, I don't know this, but like direct Xiaohu into the right lane so he can split push on Zed and have these pressure factors. I think, like I said, I think most of Royal strength right now is Mata. And MLXG. I think MLXG follows directions or he works with Mata well.
So to tie the points together, if RNG plays against SKT, is this the issue? If they don't get ahead early, then SKT will just pick them apart, basically.
I think that is a problem, yes. And I don't think they're going to have an easy time based on the laning strength of SKT. Because if we look at the weaknesses of SK Telecom right now, it's really more about the meta for them, because playing around a strong jungle pick when they're and Blank can play these champions. This is what he plays. He plays Kindred and solo queue. He plays Graves and solo queue. We know he can do these champions where you can have a carry jungler. They just as a team don't play around carry junglers particularly well, and they don't give them advantages, and they don't rely on them to carry them, because SK Telecom has never had to do that with Bengi. So straight out of the laning phase, if the enemy jungler doesn't affect their individual lanes that much, it should be pretty easy for SKT. If there's a strong jungler, which Swift and MLXG are on these carry junglers, it may be a bit harder. It all depends. Like, again, we don't know which Blank is showing up. Obviously, SK Telecom made the decision to play Blank at this tournament for a reason. He's been gone for several weeks now, like a month. I don't know what shape he's in.
So, okay, the other Chinese team is quite interesting, Xiaogu, because obviously they're doing well in China, but the thing that's confusing to me is when the off-season stories made it sound like, right, well, they've got all these options as to where they're going to go. They can bring in Uzi as the AD carry if they want. They could even use like Dade as a sub mid laner sometimes. They have Tom as a potential jungle sub, and yet actually they've majority of the time just used their original lineup, but the original lineup looks even better now. What do you think of Xiaogu now? I know in the past you were very critical of them. This team looks pretty good.
Well, the problem with Xiaogu is their first 10 minutes of the game. Like, they do really weird lane swaps that I think are very inefficient, including, like, they do old CJ Blaze shit, like give up towers and then double freeze lanes, which leaves them very vulnerable to dives and counterplay and jungle invades and deep warding. And I think that they're getting away with it because they exist in China, where teams are not generally so strong in a macro or a strategic sense. They also just do wacky shit, like they quad invaded blue buff at level 1 against Royal, which gave them like an insane disadvantage in the laning phase. So the stuff that they do, I think, is really inefficient when it comes to level 1 play or from lane swaps. And what they're good at is playing Victor and wave clear in the mid and having Doan be like teleport all around the map. And what they're very good at is skirmishing and team fighting still. That's still true of them. So if you have to take an early advantage and punish their poor early macro play, I think, because their team fighting is quite good.
Which of the Western teams, because it sounds like for both of these Chinese teams, you're saying like early on, like RNG if they don't get ahead, Xiaogu in terms of just this early period where they're vulnerable. Which Western team has the best chance to exploit this?
I think CLG is a really good matchup for Xiaogu, actually, because I think that CLG is a team that can execute lane swaps very well. And I think that CLG is a team that could take advantage of Xiaogu's weak early game, because when we think about this season, for the most part, CLG's strengths has been lane swapping, and QG's weakness has been lane swapping. So I think CLG, and it's fortunate that they're in the same group, I think CLG can beat Xiaogu, weirdly enough.
So this Ever team that's come now, obviously by winning the Kesper Cup, it's great stuff. Then they won IEM Cologne, but then they lost Athena, the mid laner, went over to EDG. And at the time, there was some stuff where people were like, maybe they will lose key. Like, was it because of the ban or something like that? Like, it wasn't. He
wasn't banned. He wasn't banned. What happened was he was accused of like account boosting, of elo boosting, okay. And he wasn't ever banned competitively, but his like team suspended him while the investigation was going on, and I guess it came back negative because now he's back. Yeah. I really don't think Ever's a very good team. They are very reckless in their shot calling. Their macro play is really poor. I don't think Athena switching for Tempt really affected this team that much, because they still just play like wave clear mids, and it's like Athena and Tempt I think are comparable in skill and comparable in style. But they like to play teleport compositions, but they also like to just teleport when the cooldown is up every 5 minutes and try and force fights. Like, they're a skirmish-based team, but they're so blind when it comes to engagements and so recklessly aggressive that they can give up cross-map objectives really easily. Fortunately for them, I think they have a very good matchup versus TSM, because TSM is basically a team that does nothing until they group as 5 and then just try and team fight you. But their team fighting and skirmishing is worse than that of Evers. So basically, we're talking about teams here that have both TSM and Ever have very poor shot calling, I would say, but strong individual strengths. The difference is that Ever is so aggressive, they will pull the trigger every single time they go in, right? They will just continue to hammer you with skirmishes, whereas TSM will play very passively until they just like 5-man group in the mid game and hope you make a mistake. Like, I think TSM's record in the NALCS is actually super inflated because they should have lost a lot of the games that they won.
So I seem to remember, Monty, coming into IM Cologne, actually, you didn't think Ever would be that strong. So is there no carryover there? Like, they won't just look better against Westerners or anything?
Maybe they will, but it's like, if this was an Ever CLG matchup, I would favor CLG, because even if the thing about Ever is they like group and then they have this fight and they kill you, but then they like lose 2 towers as a result. Like, they do really dumb shit. So against any team that has strong shot calling, I think they will lose. TSM is not one of those teams.
So like you say, TSM, I actually agree. This is an example of where I almost wish when I'd done my video on them, I could have done it 2 weeks later. Because unfortunately, when I did my video was when, like, I think the next week was when they, like, that whole thing where they brought in Weldon Green and they won the 2 games and everyone was like, oh no, TSM's back on track. And I was trying to make the point, like, no, you have to look, like, at the time, they only had, like, 1 legit win pretty much in the whole league. Everything else was just dumping on all the bad teams. And then, I say dumping on them, I just mean beating them. You go look at the games and they were almost lost to Team Liquid, almost lost to fucking Renegade. Like, the whole bunch of teams where, if you're the top team, these should be the gimmies, you know. These are the ones where you only win if you're like Immortals or you're just fucking around and you still win anyway.
The only reason TSM won versus us with Renegades is because we had an absolutely pants-on-head stupid Baron call at 20 minutes. We were up 5k on them at 20 minutes. If we had played a normal game against them, they would have lost. Like, TSM's entire strategy consists of surviving laning phase, grouping as 5, and praying to God that the enemy makes a mistake.
Like, people will get butthurt when I say this because they'll think, oh, standard TSM anti-bias. But TSM right now could be like 6th in NLCS. Yeah, but not unreasonably. Like, all you have to do is take a couple of the wins away. And by the way, they've had a lot that were close cut affairs.
Way too close.
And they'd be mid-table to lower part of the table. And by the way, I get it. I get why people are not mad at that, because I look at the roster and I'm like, this should be a fucking amazing team.
Yeah, of course it should be.
So many good players in this team. And it's not even like you can look at the team and go, well, it's this guy. This guy's letting down. It's like aside from Svenskeren, I think has been a bit lackluster. In general, most of the players have had times when they looked pretty good.
Yeah, and of course we can look at those very dominating wins. I mean, look at how TSM destroyed CLG. But again, I think CLG is weak to individually strong players, and if CLG comes out weak in laning phase, and they don't lane swap, they can get screwed. So I think TSM's individual talent is not in question, but neither is Evers. Like, on an individual level, Evers players are good. I also don't think that Ever is suited for this meta, because Ares is a jungler who likes to play like Lee Sin and Rek'Sai when other teams play Graves and Kindred. They're not a team that carries out of the jungle either. It's not a great meta for them.
But so this is going to be a carry jungle tournament?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
So then, does that help Svenskeren at all?
No. I don't think Svenskeren has been playing very well. I think he's probably the worst player in TSM right now.
Okay. Well, then on exactly that note, then let me ask you about Fnatic then, because Fnatic, obviously, the one thing about Spirit is he hasn't been playing well, but he's been farming up like a motherfucker. So can he carry?
But here's the thing about Fnatic. Here's what I really don't like about Fnatic as a team. So you remember when Spirit was going absolutely nuts on WE last year?
Sure.
You know how he was like invading people and solo killing the enemy junglers and just like able to dive people? The thing about Fnatic that I don't understand is I feel that their drafts and the way that they draft is wrong for the style of their players, right? Because what do you need for Spirit to pick Nidalee and to go nuts on people, or to pick these carry junglers? You need him to be able to invade. And the problem now is that his lanes lack pressure. So when he walks into River, frequently his lanes are pressed up against their turrets, and he just dies because everybody collapses on him. Like, I think Fnatic has a fundamental misuse of Spirit going on right now, where they're not playing to his strengths. Because I look at Febiven, for example, and let's look at Febiven's most played champions this season, his top three. Lissandra, Ahri, LeBlanc. Okay? These are not strong wave clear champions. I think that if Febiven had instead been playing champions like Victor and Corki, which he's only played once this season each, that he could push the mid lane up and then come help Spirit kill motherfuckers in the enemy jungle. I think they're actually drafting and playing the style of the team wrong for the players that they have. That's my theory about Fnatic. Also, we look at the bottom lane. Reckless. He's had Lucian games, which is good, but he's also played a bunch of Ezreal recently. Like, that doesn't help you push up these lanes. And Gamsu, the problem with Gamsu is he's played tanks this entire season. His top 5 champions are Malphite, Maokai, Olaf, Nautilus, and Sion. These are not high-pressure laners. If he had been here's my theory. If Gamsu had been playing Graves top, and Febiven had been playing Corki mid, and Spirit had been playing Nidalee, they could actually do things. They could actually have Spirit invade the enemy jungle. So I think that they are actually just using Spirit incorrectly. I don't think this is a bad team. I think their plan is bad.
Which makes it interesting because obviously, I mean, this tournament alone won't answer the question, but I want to see over the year how this develops. Because I feel like when you look at these players, these aren't terrible players. There's a bunch of talented players here. So I think this year will be what will really set the legacy of Daleor. Because obviously, last year it was easy for everyone to go, he's the best coach, he's figured it all out, he's got all the plan, blah, 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 blah. Well, you've got pieces now, and at the moment, it's not like you can go, these players are just bad, and therefore there's nothing to work with. Just at the moment, they're not using them correctly, is what you're saying.
That's my opinion. I just look at Spirit's success on WE, and I look at what his strengths are as a player and using his mechanics and using his aggressive tendencies and playing around him. And I see this season that every time he has to walk into the river, his team has no pressure. The lanes collapse on him and he gets killed. And it's like, why aren't you just playing high? Why H2K does this? You realize, right? H2K is really good. If we look at H2K's strengths and why they're winning, so we know Forgiven's going to play a lane down a champion. What does Forgiven like to do? He likes to play Caitlyn or Lucian and poke you out of lane and then take your turret, right? That's Forgiven in a nutshell. What has Ryu been doing? He's been playing fucking Corki. You know, you look at their game, like this past week, the H2K Fnatic game, and that's what they're doing. They're applying all the pressure. And we see Spirit on Gragas, who is a losing matchup to Nidalee, and Jankos and Vander just invade his jungle all the time and fuck him. Like, I imagine those comps like reversed in my mind, and I just see how strong Spirit could be.
Okay, so basically, even though this is a tournament to carry from, he hasn't got the team at the moment in terms of how they played set up for him to be able to.
He just doesn't have the picks in the lane, right? How you unlock that aggressive jungling revolves around your lane matchups.
I also think in Fnatic, one thing that's been really lackluster for me is this is where people overhype players. One thing the thing I don't like about hype is hype is not when you get excited about a really good player playing well and you say, what a good player. For me, hype is where you actually are artificially making it more. So what you say is you take someone who's a good player and you go, no, he could be the best player and he will be the best player and he could do X, Y, and Z. And what happens is you project forwards what you imagine could happen. So this is what happened last year with Febiven. Everyone said, no. It's not just that Huni carries the game and that Yellow Star's doing 6-shot calling and they move around the map and they have this really great style. What it is Febiven could be like the best mid laner in the whole world, blah, 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 because, you know, he has the skill set and it's just that he doesn't have to. It's like, but that's the key thing. Because he didn't have to, he never did. You just did it sometimes. So since he didn't have to every game, you don't actually know that he could do it every game. The point being, Season 6 comes along, Huni's gone, they've got a totally new team, they don't have that 6-shot calling. Now's when we need to cash in that insurance policy. Now we need Febiven to be hard carrying every game, superstar player, and then we've got one reliable carry threat. It's been a bit up and down, I have to say. Like you're saying, his champion pool hasn't been that close to the meta. He hasn't been like just smashing lane. I mean, I look at the game, it's like he's a good player still, but he's not really a superstar right now.
I mean, I wouldn't say his champion pool has been close to the meta. I would just say that he's been playing like Lysandra is his most played champion. That's a supportive champion fundamentally. It's a champion that sets up team fights. And Lysandra is great in the current meta if you have a strong carry jungler and a strong AD carry to play around her ult.
Okay. So, what do you actually think of Origin coming in? Because obviously, like, forget all the other teams. Like, to me, the only team that's comparable to Origin this tournament is TSM. Because both teams, you look at the players, you go, what fantastic lineup, should be very good. Then you look at them play in the league, and they're not very good. In fact, what's funny is, like I said, if TSM had lost a few of those games, they could have. They'd be where Origin are right now. It'd be the same exact story. Yes. So what is Origin's chances for a tournament like this?
I don't think it's great. I think SOAS has been really lackluster, and I think that their shot calling around teleport has not been strong. I think that when we talk about their coordination as a team, that's where they really fall apart. Is that when they need to make teleport plays or they need to make jungle invades and aggressive plays, they just don't do it. And that they are, like TSM, much more reliant on their opponent's mistakes than they are on their own proactive plays.
And obviously the big problem for Origin is the only like carry threat consistently has been Sven.
Sven, yes, absolutely.
And then you look at this tournament, some pretty good AD carries at this tournament. So it's not like he's going to have some mad advantage over like the shitter bottom of the LCS EU AD carries.
Yeah, I mean, even on Ever, like Loken and Eve are very good. Or Loken and Key, rather.
So, okay, let's actually do the matchups now because we've done like a general overview. Okay, so in Group A, okay, here's the thing, a detail for people that, because a lot of people didn't notice this. I found out myself by looking on Twitter. Apparently, upper bracket is best of 1, but lower bracket is best of 3.
No. It's like a Counter-Strike tournament, Duncan. So it's best of 1 until the final match, which is best of 3. You know what I mean? It's a dual tournament system.
Since the winner of the upper goes to anyway, basically the only match that's best of 3 is the lower final then.
Well, it says elimination matches are best of 3. So actually, the losers bracket will be best of 3 too. Interesting.
Yeah, here's the thing. I found it here. Here's the tweet. So the tweet is from Kefka, and he says, "I'm assuming this means the first loser match, as in the first one at the bottom, and the match for the second seed, so the losers final, will be best of 3." Carmack says yes. So basically, there's 2 best of 3s, right, which is the lower bracket.
Okay, so, that's unique. That we don't say that in Counter-Strike.
So we don't have to consider that overall, because as far as I know, the first tournament alpha draft is just day 1, so it's just the first matches, I think. But
day 1 is a group.
Oh, okay then. Well, let's check. Well, in that case, let's just double check something. So in that case, you actually probably want teams that are going to the lower bracket for your.
Oh, you definitely do.
So okay, first things first. Just to isolate the matchup, Ever versus TSM. Ever will win this game.
I'm double checking this right now just to make sure. So let's take a look. Yeah, it should be all of the matches on each day. So yeah, we will be going through a group A day. So it'll be Group A, and you definitely want to pick players that you think are going to basically qualify through the losers bracket. Okay. Those are the players and the teams you want.
Well, here's the thing: if Ever plays TSM in the first game, TSM will lose.
It's hard to say because I think that Ever has to take that advantage early, and TSM. Yeah, I think Ever will win this. I don't think TSM is good enough at trading objectives for Ever to win.
Okay. And in terms of players, the ESC Ever players are all second most expensive at their role. So you're probably not worth it. They might go to the lower.
Yeah, I don't think I would, because I think that RNG is likely to make it out. Ooh, interesting, actually. Maybe Ever is likely to make it out of the losers bracket in this scenario.
I mean, with this group, it wouldn't be unreasonable, right?
It's probably going to be Ever or Origin. Origin is at least good at picking up throws, and that's to a degree TSM is too. Obviously, they've been playing from behind in a lot of their games, and they both TSM and Origin capitalize on enemy mistakes. It's just a matter of who's going to have the stronger early game. But I think Ever is just going to be so crazy aggressive and overzealous in their use of teleport, and I don't think it's going to be punished by either TSM or Origin. So yeah, the Ever players are probably a good pickup here, because I think they will go through the losers bracket.
So, being as they don't play in a league, so who don't have any stats, who are the players you would predict will be the good points forever?
Probably Loken and Key. You don't really want to go after Tempt or Ares because they don't tend to carry this team. So Loken and Crazy and Key are the ones to go for.
Is it viable for Key to play Bard if it's up in this tournament?
Absolutely.
Is that a great champion for assists?
Yes, I mean he's a very good Bard player. He was less good recently, and remember that Ever's coming off a 0-2 loss against MVP. They're not even first in Korean Challenger right now. They have a lot of flaws. Ever is a very flawed team.
Okay, so in the other matchup, Origin play RNG, and I'm guessing RNG should win this.
I would think they would win it. I think that Mata's shot calling, like the strength of Origin is in Sven, and the strength of RNG is in their duo lane also. Except I think that their jungle coordination and their shot calling and their early aggression and ability to snowball is better than Origin's. I don't think Origin will be able to survive that early aggression. I think RNG will close out this game pretty quickly.
You said that Gragas is back, and Amazing is famously a Gragas player.
Well,
So-
RNG can ban it.
Okay, it's true. That's true. You know what, Monty? I've just realised if you're playing against Amazing, you can actually ban champions out, and it makes it harder for him. Shit! No, if only we'd known this years earlier. Excuse me a second, I just have to hop into this time machine. Dandy, you need me, mate. Okay, that's the thing though, Monty. That's what I'm looking forward to. This first matchup, listen, he came on the show, everything's fine, there's no drama or anyone. I'm just saying that when I see people who are invade carry junglers play against, scheduled to play against Amazing, I get a little tingle, you know. I start to get a little bit aroused. That's not enough to get me going entirely. I have to watch to get. Basically, as soon as they take that first buff, I'm in the zone right there. That's like you come in from a hard day's work. If you're a woman, this is you come in. It's already dim. You know, someone's turned out the lights and put candles. There's petals leading up the stairs. That's like they've invaded, took the first buff. He's like being banned off a champion. Then at that point, obviously that's not it. You have to then go into the bathroom. There has to be a bubble bath there, some fine wines, etc. That's when they then get the next buff. At that point in time, it's time. You know, it's time for a good night. That's all I'm saying. It's good night to Amazing. It's what I'm saying there. So Origin likely to go. Here's the question then: if there's this best of 3 system, and if this really does cover the whole group, let me just double check if that's actually the case. Let's see. Oh, right. No, the tournament only covers the first 2 matches.
What?
The IEM tournament only covers the first 2 matches on Alpha Draft.
That should be incorrect because
So
it
it
goes
says,
through
right?
the entire day.
Yeah, but it's just for ESC, TSM, and RNG Origin for the contests.
I think it should go through the whole day. That's my thinking on it right now.
Okay, but there's nothing I can do about that. So anyway,
All right.
what about RNG players? If you're going to pick some, assuming it's only these first 2 matches, which one would you pick?
MLXG. MLXG is good. Yeah, I'd take MLXG and Mata probably. I mean, Whoosh and Xiaohu do their job and they can rack up kills, but when MLXG does well, the team does well. So
Okay. So of these players, bearing in mind Ever and RNG, the two most expensive sets of teams, people are gonna have to round out their roster with someone from one of the TSM or Origin. So are there players that you would add in?
Yeah, Sven. Let's add Sven in. I think Origin should be TSM, so I'd just go ahead and add him in too.
I mean, they won't be playing though. If it's only the first 2 matches.
If they lose, if they both lose.
Yeah, but the contest says first 2 matches only. Listen, Monty, if I've learned one thing, you can't go to war with Alpha Draft. They are our benefactors. We must follow their every command. If they say it's the 2 matches, then it's only 2. I don't know. We'll see about that. Okay. Well, here's what we'll do then. We'll just predict the rest of the tournament, even though it's not going to happen. So, if Ever plays against RNG wins that in the upper bracket.
I think RNG wins. Ever's really, really sloppy. And I think RNG has better shot calling from Mata, and they will be able to punish Ever's mistakes better. And they also, I think, line up better in terms of individual skill.
Okay. And then in the lower bracket, you intimated Origin beats TSM, and then TSM plays Ever, and then you're not. Oh no, Origin plays Ever rather, and then
I think
you
Ever
think
beats
you
them,
think
too.
Ever's going to get out in second.
But that's not sure. Like that's
Sure.
I'm not entirely confident about that. I really am pretty down on Ever right now.
If Ever was an LCK, where do you think they would be? Where would you put them?
Eighth,
They're that bad?
ninth. Yes, yes, Duncan. They are that bad. Their shot calling, their macro strategy is really poor.
Okay. Right. In the other group, we start off with SKT versus CLG. Right. Does CLG have any chance?
No. This is like the thing is if you're going to strike at SKT, you have to strike at them through the carry jungle position, and Xmithy is not that guy. So like they've been winning from Darshan. We're talking about Duke. I don't think CLG can win this game.
I have a question for you actually about CLG. Like you're saying, like the mid lane talent champion pool's been pretty limited, etc. One of the things about the Korean league, whenever I watch LCK, is most of the top teams do stick super hard to the meta. Like it seems like some of them just tell their players like these are the champions you play. It's not even like they do it comfort style. So for example, it's very common you'll see all the Korean top players play Poppy, play all the champions that everyone's playing at the moment.
Sure.
Do you think that Duke and Darshan's champion pool will have any effect on the match in that sense?
I think Duke plays a whole bunch of shit, and he will do fine on any of the meta picks. There's a wide variety of top laners available right now. I think that CLG can't play Lulu mid because they don't trust Huhi to and Stixxay to carry the game. Like Stixxay has to carry the game. And if SKT gets Lulu mid, what the fuck is Huhi going to do on LeBlanc or Corki? Like Faker will play Lulu. It's his most played champion this season. They're going to super empower Bang, and that's how they win most of their games. And Bang will outplay Stixxay 100%.
So, which players would you take fantasy-wise from SKT?
Bang and Faker, especially in this matchup. Like the matchup is just bad at mid and bot lane for CLG.
Okay. And then the other matchup, Fnatic takes on Xiaogu. Now, in light of what you said before about Spirit, it's probably going to be a problem for Spirit that Swifty is like a carry jungler.
Yeah, Swift has been doing really well this season, and he will have the pressure in his lanes because, hey, what does QG do? Oh, that's right, they play Victor. You know, they play strong champions with wave clear in the mid lane when it's not banned. If Fnatic is smart, I think they will ban Victor because it's doing best champion. If they leave the Victor up, then it's going to be a field day for Swift. Because how QG plays is they wave clear. They've had success with LeBlanc as well, it's true. But the way that QG plays with Victor is B just all-ins you under the turret while Swift dives you because they have the wave pushed up and you die. That's it. Or Victor will come into another lane and kill you with teleport. QG plays teleport Victor. So I think Fnatic has to ban Victor, but I just think that QG knows how to play to their style and the strength of Swift much better. Like QG is the team that Fnatic should be, in my opinion.
Okay. Because I have one question. This is why I asked for the Origin one, whether like if Gragas is available, if Amazing would just pick him. In theory, if you're in a meta where people are just playing carry junglers and they're going to try and invade your ass early, isn't Gragas like one of the best champs to pick to be safe in that scenario?
No, he's actually a terrible matchup into Nidalee because basically it's Gragas. Nidalee walks into your jungle and starts auto-attacking you from range, and Gragas can't do anything.
Ah, okay.
So if they could take Gragas for Spirit, and that was played, but even like I said in the Fnatic H2K matchup this past week, Spirit played Gragas and Jankos played Nidalee, and Jankos destroyed him.
Yeah. I mean, aside from the fact that obviously there's no Forgiven, so in a way where it's lucky we didn't have H2K here.
The Fnatic entity is so interesting. So this last week, Fnatic played Gangplank mid and Ezreal bottom lane. Super low wave clear scaling lanes, right? And then they pick Gragas, and H2K picks Nidalee. So Ryu's playing Corki. I forget what they're Caitlyn in the bottom lane for Forgiven. And then they have Nidalee. So they put all H2K does is push up mid and bot lane, and Jankos just walks into the jungle and starts styling on Spirit. Like, I don't understand what Fnatic is doing in their draft or their style that they think it's a great idea to pick two super weak lanes and then pick a weak jungler into the jungle matchup. It's just awful drafting.
Okay. So, because one of the things I would have been interested in this tournament, had there not been the Forgiven scenarios, if we'd have seen H2K I'd love to see what Jankos would do against Swift, or what he'd do in
Right?
a carry jungle scenario. So in the winners match, likely Xiaogu versus SKT. Does Xiaogu have a chance against SKT? Are they one of the teams that can take a game?
Sure. Yeah, I think they could. I mean, there is a possibility for an upset here because we do have Swift and
it's a best of one.
Again, Xiaogu though they're really shitty in lane swaps and they're really shitty in the early game. And SKT is still a disciplined team when it comes to lane swaps in the early game. So I think SKT can take a big lead out of the early game, but they do have to be careful because this is a team with Swift that could like just out skirmish them and outplay them, right? Out team fight them right now because they're not as coordinated as QG is.
Okay. So in that scenario, SKT coming out in first.
I think they will, but there's a possibility they come out in second.
I'm assuming that if Xiaogu loses in the upper bracket, they're going to come out second still.
I would assume so, yeah.
If CLG plays Fnatic, I'm already guessing you're saying CLG is going to beat Fnatic.
I think CLG would beat Fnatic, yes. I think they're more in tune with their own playstyle than Fnatic is. I think Fnatic is just a conceptual wreck.
But didn't you say that if CLG plays Xiaogu, I mean, admittedly, it'll be a best of three, that CLG has a team that might be a good matchup against Xiaogu?
Yeah, it might be, because again, they play lane swaps well. So if they can get enough, I don't think, they definitely don't have the team fighting that Xiaogu does. But if they can take enough of an advantage and snowball the game and avoid like Huhi and Stixxay dying to the carries of QG, which admittedly is difficult, right? You know, Peko and Duanbe have been doing well this season. Who knows if they're going to play Uzi or not? Like, Uzi would be a big problem for Stixxay.
Yeah.
That's definitely an option.
That's also something that's sick about like Asian teams, is that they literally have like Uzi I. It's not even like he's bad. It's just that, first of all, they had any kind that already fit their team style well, and is also very good, by the way, at the moment. But they literally, if they wanted, just to fuck around, could put Uzi I in, and it's not like you then get an easier game. In some ways, it'd be hard in some ways. You wouldn't even be prepared for that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think CLG has a chance for an upset, though. I really do think they do.
Okay, so in that scenario, we'd have like RNG versus QG likely as one of the semifinals, and Ever versus SKT as the other one.
I think
now,
SKT.
Those are best of threes.
Yeah, Ever doesn't have the jungle strength. Like, Ares is a Rek'Sai player. He's not going to exploit. And if Blank plays well, Blank will play a carry style of jungle. So that is the advantage for SKT here. It's just it's a question mark about Blank. So I think SKT is better suited to this meta. They have much better shot calling, even though that's been shaky for a while for them, but still. And then QG versus RNG.
That should be a great game.
Should be fun, but I think I'll call it the same way I did before. RNG has the better early game, and they can snowball it. So I think it'll be RNG SKT in the finals. SKT wins.
I think that should be an excellent final. I really hope that is the final, personally.
Yeah, it'll really show Blank's mettle because MLXG is RNG's strength right now.
The only downside, of course, being if RNG was to win, everyone will be like, well, it's just because that black guy's in there. We can't win much. You can never actually win. That's the problem. But it would be nice. Also, by the way, what would be great about those playoffs is that both Chinese teams will be in the semi-finals. So hopefully China can regain some of its cachet as a top region, because I don't buy the idea that they're just done forever now and they don't think so. All that sort. They're going to bounce back eventually, and there's so many good players in that region. It's almost inevitable there's going to be some elite level Chinese team again, if there isn't already, as we might find out at this tournament. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Who do you think has the best chance to be like the dark horse? Who's like the crazy team that maybe they can make some miracle run or have some
CLG maybe, if they play a very, very strong macro game. But I just don't see them. It's one thing to rely on the macro game to that level in NA. It's another thing to like rely on it to that degree where it's obvious that Stixxay and Huhi are very limited players in terms of skill and competing on an international stage versus the world's best.
It is depressing how incredibly flawed Origin, Fnatic, TSM, and Ever are at this tournament. Yeah. Before it even starts, like, come on, man,
well, even CLG, like, I just don't think that Darshan is a world class top laner, and I think that relying on him to carry against a player like Duke is a big ask. And there aren't any other carries on the team. There aren't.
But, you know, to be fair though, Monty, one advantage that CLG does have is that they have a world-class shot caller and playmaker with excellent mechanical ability coming out of the support position, one of the top 20 players in the world in many ways. And so maybe with that advantage, because there's not that many gods at the support position in this tournament, so maybe that could be enough, you know?
Maybe it could be.
Oh, actually, I have a question then. Since Mata is in this tournament, it's been a long time since we saw him play internationally. What do you think the Mata of 2016 is like compared to the guy that last time a lot of Western fans probably saw him was World Championship Season 4? So what is Mata like now?
I think it was pretty bad last year. It looks like he's on a bit of a revitalized run this year. I think his laning phase is still very good. And again, I think he needs to be ahead for his team to play around, but when he gets ahead, he does very well.
Okay. I think we've covered pretty much everything here. Oh, I've got one more question. If you had to guess, and it doesn't have to be someone from the winning team, obviously, if they play phenomenally. If you had to pick out who you think like an MVP of the tournament will be, who would you identify? Because personally, like I said on Twitter, I think that MLXG has a chance, because I think they're going to go to the final to do very well in this tournament and be like a mega impact player. Who would you pick as your potential MVP of the tournament?
I think Duke has a really good chance just because the top lane field is not actually very strong at this particular event. I mean, Soaz is playing great right now. I mean, it's Darshan, it's V, Looper. I mean, I think Duke is definitely Duke is definitely the strongest top laner at this tournament, so he could make a huge impact.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, if things go according to the way we've predicted, Baker would play Huhi, then nobody white or Western, and just end the whole tournament. It's like, great, another tournament where we don't get to see him play anyone. Great. Like, we won't get to see him versus Bjergsen or fucking Power of Evil. Or, these are the people I want to see the matchups for. But sadly, I mean, that's just League of Legends right there, mate. They're not even, the teams aren't good enough to actually get like the right to play the final boss. So he's like, sorry, you died at level 18. I'm the final boss. So I'm at level 30. It's the way I've been so brainwashed in my mind. Like, Riot has made me think all games end at level 30. Like, level 30 is the highest you can get. Well done, Riot. You got to me. You brainwashed me. So, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much the end of the show. So, if you want to play fantasy esports and all that guff, do it by the numbers. For the person who's producing, this is where you end the show now. End the show. End the show. Anytime.